very, very warm welcome to all of you for this wonderful event, the TiE Seattle CIO Roundtable. I don't have a hand mic, ladies. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Yeah, they can hear me. So this is actually one of our very interesting programs we've been doing for years. And it brings a lot of new perspective that the CIOs and in the different industries across bring, their perspective that is very, very informative, valuable for the entrepreneurs and the enterprises. TiE Seattle is a part of TiE Globals, the Indus Entrepreneurs, started around 2000, the Seattle chapter. Today, TiE has over 70 global chapters. Sirish, where are you? Yeah. You are one of the oldest founder members, right, from 2000 maybe? Yeah. Yeah, so there you are. So we have a lot of continuity, legacy carrying on with us, which is inspiring us all the time. And so today we are about 150 odd members and charter members. And we encourage a lot of people who are not members to become members because TiE actually, it fosters and nurtures entrepreneurship at all levels. It runs various programs across the globe. And some of the very, very popular programs include TiE, which is the TiE Youth Entrepreneurship, bringing young high schoolers, giving them education about entrepreneurship, making them aware by providing mentors from people who have actually been involved. And we have a new session opening up, so in case you have any high schooler in your family or your network, encourage them to reach out to us, and they should definitely participate. We create teams of 4 or 5 different individuals who come out with their whole business ideas. They make a pitch, we give them the funding, so it's a great program for the youngsters. We, of course, have the CIO Roundtable, which I mentioned, and we'll talk a little more about it as we go. We also have a CEO Roundtable where we pick up CEOs of startups, and we run multiple programs with them. We also have TiE Institute, which is something that Sirish here, my colleague here, has been running for years. It's basically helping young startups, by giving them a lot of mentoring, education, and support. And a lot of TiE Seattle members, charter members, invest their time and commitments to nurture these companies. We also have the investment outlook panel, which gives you the trends of the investment, where the investors are putting their money in. So it's a great program and wonderful event for everybody to participate. Any such programs are not possible without support and sponsorship of a lot of people. So first and foremost, I would like to thank our sponsor, Quadrant, Vamshi, old friend, very, very supportive. I think we know each other for about, roughly 20 years, maybe? And so thank you, Quadrant. Kishore, you want to put the video there? So before I invite him, I want a video from Quadrant, and then I will invite Vamshi to come and speak.
Leading cloud and data company, pushing the boundaries of innovation in the industry. We work with marquee Fortune 100 customers such as Microsoft, United Airlines, Amazon, Univar, and more. Quadrant can be your partner that streamlines your operations, helps you implement DevOps principles and practices, and help harnesses the power of data, AI, and machine learning. We can accelerate your application development journey by providing end-to-end services tailored to your needs, ensuring top-notch quality. So, whether you're a startup, a growing enterprise, or an established industry leader, Quadrant Technologies is your gateway to harnessing the true potential of data and cloud solutions. With 17+ years of experience and 3,000+ professionals working globally, Quadrant is your ultimate partner for success. We are ranked number 67 by Incorporated 5000 as the fastest growing company in America 2021. Our team of experts is here to guide you at each step. Get ready to embark on a transformative journey with Quadrant Technologies. For more information, please contact on at quadrantresource.com.
Vamshi.
Thanks, Malak. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank Kishore. I think he's doing an amazing job being a president of this year for TiE. Kishore, thank you. So I'm a charter member from TiE, but there are a bunch of known faces here. I used to work for Microsoft. I left Microsoft in 2015 and started the services company. So I've always wanted to give back to work with the community. So I'm happy and proud to be sponsoring this event. Definitely, it's a great networking event and meet a lot of good friends and new entrepreneurs. And definitely looking forward to hear from Laurent, Linda, Sabra, and Sanjay. It's a great roundtable, but good to meet you all. Thank you. And Shirish, thanks for the book. We'll read. Thank you very much. Thanks, Malay.
Thank you. Thanks once again for your sponsorship. So, we host so many events in so many different venues. And when it comes to all the experience, I've been a TiE charter member for the last 12 years. But this is one of the finest venues that I have been to, and I'm sure many of you have been to many other venues, can vouch for it, right? Raise your hands if you have. So this is only possible because of the wonderful, wonderful city of Bellevue, their employees, their staff, and their administration. Levi, can I invite you to come and put in a few words?
Thanks so much.
Thank you for
Our
sponsoring
pleasure.
this.
Thank you so much. It's very, very exciting to have you all here. TiE Seattle is such a wonderful and critical component of the very rich startup ecosystem that we have in this area. So it's really wonderful to be able to host this event here. My name's Levi. I work with the Startup 425 program with the city of Bellevue. Startup 425 is a program that was launched several years ago, paused during the pandemic, and just recently relaunched about 3 months ago. We're a partnership program between the cities of Bellevue, Renton, Redmond, Issaquah, and Kirkland. And essentially, our broad goal is to support economic development by empowering and enabling entrepreneurs and founders in those 5 cities to start companies as successfully as possible and grow those companies as quickly as possible, both startups and small businesses. We have a particular focus on supporting founders who are coming from underrepresented communities in those cities, but it's not an exclusive or exclusionary program. It's open to everyone. I've seen a few folks who have attended a few of our events already, so welcome back. We have another event coming up on September 21st, which will be hosted here in this room, actually. We'll be talking about product management and product development at the early stages. And then we're going to be going on the road, so to speak, and hosting some other events, beginning with Renton and moving through our partner cities as well. We also host a series of co-working sessions, one a month. Our next one is coming up on Friday, September 15th. So if you or any founders you know need a little bit of time out of the house, maybe some meeting space, you're more than welcome to come and join us, meet some other folks. So broadly, that's the program. We're going to be rolling out some more of these events over the next few months and ideally launching an accelerator program as well. If you'd like to learn more about it, or if you know anyone who might be interested, our website is startup425.org. You can find our events calendar there. You can also sign up for an email list and learn about upcoming events. And I hope to see some more familiar faces from this room at some of our upcoming events. Thank you again so much.
Thank you, Levi. So with that, we'll come to kickstart this year's CIO Roundtable with the wonderful, wonderful theme of demystifying the business value by leveraging digital transformation. For the last few years, my partner in crime for this event is a wonderful, wonderful lady. She has been the moderator for this program. She has been the backbone of this program, Monica Panpalya. She is the managing director of global technology within JP Morgan Chase. She has had a lot of pedigree of work from Boeing to T-Mobile, Sprint. I thought with all her hands full with all these technology initiatives and a very demanding husband. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were here. And the kids. But I realized that she is a passionate Bharatanatyam dancer. She has got 7 patents. And I don't know. I stopped after that. I said, because otherwise this whole evening we'll be talking about her credentials. But jokes aside, fantastic lady. Monica, pleasure.
All right. It is great to see a full house today. So thank you for coming to our TiE CIO Roundtable. It's our annual event at TiE. And want to welcome all of you from Seattle that made it here. Additionally, we also have folks from Dallas, California, India, And it's great to have all of you here. So tonight's discussion is going to be around the disruption that we're seeing. With cloud, data, AI, we're seeing all these technologies underpin the business. And the question we're going to ask these award-winning CIOs and our visionary leader from Google is, how do you see the value that these transformative technologies are providing? And whether you're in the enterprise, how many of you from the enterprise? And or startups, I know I met several of you that are running your startup, or just here to network. I think you'll find this a very engaging panel. So without further ado, let me invite Laurent Roteval, my friend from Seattle CIO, and the 2023 Leadership Award winner this year at Orbi. Laurent is the CIO of Cambia Health Solutions with a lot of travel under his belt, 90 countries, was also in leadership positions at GE Oil and Gas, NBC, GE Energy. Laurent, welcome. All right, my second panelist is, I think you had the shortest commute of all, Sabra Schneider. She's also a friend from Seattle CIO community and is the CIO for the city of Bellevue, who is hosting us tonight in this beautiful facility. Sabra's been in the industry for 20 years in the civic technology area and has done some fantastic work with the city of Bellevue. So Sabra, come up. Thank you. My next panelist is Sanjay Srivastav. He is the Chief Digital Officer at Genpact, a prolific writer, speaker, and Sanjay has an interesting background. He has also been a serial entrepreneur with 4 startups under his belt. I don't know many CIOs or in this role that have done that. Everything from edge networking to data center operations to predictive algorithms, and we're so excited to have you, Sanjay. And my final panelist is Linda Zhang. Linda comes to us from Google Cloud. Linda, like me, was in the banking sector for many years, and Linda has business value, and she advises CIOs on transformation, so she will bring in a very different perspective based on the work she's done in modernization, in finance, in food and beverage, in a lot of different sectors. So welcome, Linda. So as we get into the meat, actually, let me just start off with one fun fact about each of you before we dive in. And Laurent, I'll start with you. Any fun fact? Any fun fact? What is the green button when you speak?
I mean, there's one fun fact that I use all the time is my interest in cars, but I guess I'll say that I've spent most of my youth, including being born and formed in Central and West Africa. So that has had an influence on kind of my view of things.
Great. Sabra?
It is always hard to compete with Laurent's fun facts, I'll just say that. So I took a learn to row class in Lake Sammamish rowing this year, where I was reminded about what it's like to be a brand new beginner in something incredibly complex, more complex than it looks, all those elegant people that make it look so easy. So for those of you that are rowers, hats off to you. But that's a fun fact about me.
Rowing. Awesome.
I don't know if this qualifies as a fun fact, but it's certainly something most people wouldn't know about me. My first undergraduate was actually in Indian classical music with an instrument called the sarod, which for those of you who are not familiar is a non-string, 19-string instrument. It's quite a complex instrument, actually. It's at the peak of the Indian instruments, if you will. And anyway, so that was my start. And I pursued that for a long time, then I gave up as other interests emerged in life, and I never touched it. And we've just become empty nesters a week ago. So one of the things I want to do is to get back into it.
Fantastic.
How fun. Wow. So one fun fact, although I'm terrified of heights, one of my favorite experiences traveling is I did hang glide over the favelas in Brazil, and an amazing life memory experience.
So we have a glider, a musician, a rower, and then Laurent from West Africa. And race cars. All right, so Sanjay, I'm going to ask you, first of all, just a broad question about the role of CIOs. And how is that changing as we see shifts in technology? We're seeing shifts in the geopolitical environment. We're seeing business models changing.
I think there are three things that are driving the core of the change in a CIO's job. The first one is every company, every corporation is necessarily becoming a technology company that happens to do financial services or happens to do manufacturing. And as that transition happens in the industry, the role of the CIO is changing from being a service provider, I would say a flight engineer, to a leader that actually drives the corporation. I would say a co-pilot or a pilot. You have a flight engineer that's super important. The plane's not going to take off if that person isn't on board, at least in commercial airlines. But they're not actually driving the flight. It's a very important role, though. And I think that role is now shifting into that of a pilot or a co-pilot. I think the second thing that's really driving is a lot of change in the CIO's job is that tech, unfortunately or fortunately, is no longer the long pole in the tent anymore. And one of the realizations we have is as we automate different businesses and processes and transform them, actually what ends up happening is it doesn't just automate, it doesn't just make every part of that process faster, and so it's the same things that the human colleagues have to do. When you now digitally transform a business process, that fundamentally changes a different experience, different output, different integrations, different processing, and therefore different work that needs to happen by the human colleagues. And so operating model, skilling, resourcing. And so you think about the role of a CIO now, it's not about technology only, it's actually about orchestrating change at the people and process level. And that's, I think, a big thing that's happened. And maybe if I had to add the third thing that I think is going on is the pace of change is just incredible. And I always point out that as fast and as accelerated the pace of change has come to be, it is the slowest it'll ever be in the future. And so, across generative AI and all the opportunities and pitfalls it represents, but even like shifting across to something that isn't like growth oriented, but you think about typically we've all had jobs around leverage. IT is built on a function of leverage. You set up a global organization, you service all these different things, you do it centrally, you have one ERP, you have one data structure, et cetera. And I think in the new world of the macroeconomy that we're in, and the new world of the geopolitics that we're going into, as you start segmenting different geographies, as you start getting ready for the US policy in China, among other things, you need to start thinking about how do you have the flexibility and the modularity in your enterprise architecture to be able to, at any point in time, be able to segment something off. And that's flexibility, that modularity actually comes at a cost. And so how do you balance the flexibility you necessarily need going forward with actually the leverage factor that we've come to depend on? And so that's changing the dynamics of sort of the economics of the game. So it's a time like no other, and there's a lot going on.
Great. Laurent, would your board agree with those expectations, or what would you add to that?
I'm kind of stressed to think of my job being described this way. No, I think it's a great definition. And the only thing I would add is, of course, how do you become successful, right? When these expectations are so high across so many dimensions. And, not only in my own behavior, but also in my team and the culture you build in a technology organization, you're suddenly having to really shift from a team of people who have a tradition of being perhaps a little more order takers. And now you have to have people who have the courage and the self-confidence, perhaps the opinions, the strength of opinions and the strength of conviction to actually draw the line on their business partners. And in many cases, become the leaders who drive change, right? Because it's not just about automation, it's not just about enabling workflows, it's not just about integrating things. It's really about transforming business models. And all that sounds good, and we read about it every day, but to have a team of people who can do it, starting with the leader, well, you need to stick your neck out every day, all the time, and never miss an opportunity to do so. And at the speed that Sanjay is stating, which is, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's sort of, I think we all have whiplash sometimes thinking about it. There's actually not a meeting, not an hour in the day, where there isn't an opportunity to step up and draw the line. And you have a choice. You know, you either let it go because you're tired or whatever, right? Or if you decided not to fight that battle, or you take them on, right? And so it creates enormous pressure, not only as a leader, but actually for the whole organization, right? Because that's the only way you impact at scale. And so it's, I find it's interesting, all these trends that were described are leading to a visceral, sort of human character, strength, resilience dimensions that are essential for success. And if you don't have both, then it doesn't add up to scaled outcomes.
Sabra, anything from the government perspective that you'd like to add?
Sure. Building on what both these brilliant gentlemen sitting next to me are talking about, I would just add to deeply knowing, understanding, and embedding in the business, and also with your customer, because you can't have the kind of influence that you're talking about without knowing the business and understanding the challenges and understanding where you can help and leverage that technology to help them come out on the other side. And I think there's a huge piece of this, and both of you touched on it, but there's a huge piece of this that is training next generation technologists to be able to do that. You know, you have to be a business partner, not just a programmer, or not just somebody that's changing settings or understanding how to troubleshoot something. And that, you know, that transformation has been going on for quite some time, but I don't think I've ever felt it more than now.
And Linda, what would you add to that?
I agree with everything Sanjay, Laurent, and Sabra said, and particularly just adding on to Sabra's point about being integrated into the business. I work with a lot of executives, and the ask of being multilingual, if you will, in being able to talk your customer language, your internal stakeholders, uncovering your procurement, your IT vendors, what does everybody want, what is their value drivers, and then to articulate it in the language that they individually understand has become so critically important. Google partners a lot with our stakeholders to help translate at so many different junctures, and we've seen the demand really increase over the last years.
All right, let's get into the business value. Laurent, you are reimagining healthcare where you are with Cambia, and how do you think about the value that technology is providing as you create the sustainable healthcare system?
So maybe I'll give you just a short vignette on what Cambia is. It's a holding company for Blue Cross Blue Shield health insurance, and we also have a early stage investment arm in digital health companies and startups. There's a lot of what we do is to help navigate healthcare, right? As we all know, all of us in this room are consumers of healthcare in the U.S. system. I'll only touch on the U.S. system today, but we all know it's fractured, it's complex, it's full of surprises, it's generally too expensive, and a big part of what we do is to help navigate that. Not just pay for it, but navigate it and try to. Sometimes we joke we're sort of the Match.com of healthcare. We're trying to. People who have certain needs, we try to match them with good doctors and good hospitals and whatever it may be. And where technology comes in, of course, it's all about information, right? It's all about, a lot of that physical friction, that economic friction, that diagnostic friction, the complexity of healthcare can be simplified with technology. And, with the advent of low-cost predictive technologies, including Gen AI, there's an ability of being far more proactive to understand what an individual's history is and translate that history into a future risk profile, which allows us to reach out to these individuals in a more personalized way and kind of hide all the stuff and all the options that they don't need and try to narrow those options just to the things that they do need so that their experience and their journeys in healthcare are more intuitive. And of course, that they spend less time with healthcare and more time with their families or their hobbies or, rowing or whatever it may be. And technology has an enormous opportunity to help with that. So it's very exciting times.
That's great. And Sabra, I know with your work in the public service, you are also using technology to change how the communities are engaging, police force, et cetera. Can you describe a few of those examples?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about that. I also feel compelled to say, Learn to Row ended in August. When I learned to continue, I'd have to be rowing on the lake from 5 to 7 a.m., 3 days a week until the end of November. So beginner's mindset was good until I thought about 5 a.m. in November. So back to technology in City Hall. One of the really beautiful things about working in public sector technology is just the diversity of the kind of technology that we get to work with and the kinds of businesses that we enable. So in city of Bellevue alone, population about 152,000. You're all sitting in the middle of it right now. We support technology for public safety, so that's police, fire, road safety. We support technology for a water utility, so the clean drinking water that comes out of business and residents that live in Bellevue, the sewer system that comes out of Bellevue, and in addition to all the internal services that you would expect, finance. We're involved in supporting the technology for this room. So if something failed right now, that would be my fault, as maybe is happening in another room with different technology at this moment in time. So it's hugely diverse, and I just say that because the needs, for example, of our police are very, very different than the needs for fire crews or transportation crews working on the street. And that's something that we think about a lot as we think about deploying enterprise technology and as we think about supporting those different lines of business and their own innovation goals and their own digital goals. So a couple examples that Monica was referencing. One last year, for those of you who live in Bellevue, you may have started to see the police transparency dashboard, which came out of a lot of public engagement that we did with the city of Bellevue on folks wanting to learn more about what the police are doing. So you can learn more about what's happened in your neighborhood. You can learn more about any use of force cases. You can learn more about the diversity of our police department. You can see what crimes have been reported in the past 7 days in a geographic area in Bellevue. We launched a version of that about a year and a half ago and launched a much updated version about a year ago so that the public and the people that we serve could see more about what we're doing with policing in the city. And that's, one way that we partner with the community and with our council on delivering technology for the city.
So Laurent talked about low-cost healthcare and reach, and then a lot of great utility police examples, and what you're doing in the city. Sanjay, you've got a view with a different set of verticals. Would love to hear how you're seeing the value come through.
Maybe just as a little bit of a background as to what we do, we essentially run business processes
for large global corporations around the world. So we'll take things like supply chain, we'll take regulatory compliance, we'll take finance accounting, we'll take security and trust in the commerce world, et cetera, and we just run it, which is to say that we get paid on transaction-based delivery. So all of the data, the tech, the AI we put in is with our skin in the game. It's on my P&L. And all of the risk that comes of it sits with us. Well, the benefits actually goes to us as well, because in the end, we have a contract with the client. And so one of the really fun parts, and perhaps one of the hardest parts of the job for our team, is that in the morning we'll be in the financial services industry working through credit risk and market factors. In the afternoon we'll be looking at a consumer goods firm and thinking about pricing and market access. And in the afternoon we'll be working in IoT with the manufacturing company. And so you get to see a lot. And so across that, and I think to the question you asked, there's just such a big driver and focus around investing around data, tech, and AI. And I think what's driving that isn't just the productivity, the efficiency, the revenue growth, but the entire industries are changing. And you think about the work we do in manufacturing, and I don't know how many of you know this, but I used to be an aerospace engineer. At least I trained, or I was educated as an aerospace engineer, so follow that industry. Aircraft engines used to be sold by units. You'd buy 2 aircraft engines as an example. They're no longer sold that way. They're sold on miles flown. you never buy the engine. And the reason that's the case is because over time, using predictive modeling, you're able to figure out when it needs to be replaced, what parts are going to be required, and how to manage and maintain it for highest efficiency. And if you're the manufacturer of airplane engines, you don't actually sell them anymore. You actually own them for the rest of your life, but you deliver air miles flown. And that's an example of not a change in efficiency. It's not a company's kind of differentiated position. It's an entire industry that has evolved. So anyway, so I thought I'd bring one example that might come closer to home than an aircraft engine. Many of you, I'm sure, as I do, eat berries. And if you were to go over to Costco and talk to the head of supply chain, you'd hear this for a fact. The fastest moving SKU is actually the berries. And we serve one of the largest manufacturers, and the CDO is a good friend of mine. I spent some time with in his operations, and it never really realized it. But berries actually have two things about them. Number one, they're the freshest the day they are picked. So things like bananas and apples and so forth, you actually pick it before it's ripe, and then you warehouse it, you distribute it, you ship it, you retail it, and people buy it, bring it to the table, and it's still got a few days left before it gets to its peak. Not so with berries. Berries are the ripest the day they're picked, and so it's a 5-day farm-to-table experience. This is ideal. And we think about the supply chain around berries, and we get into all these complex industries like semiconductor. I just couldn't believe it. When you go into berries, the way berries are done, at least this company, they actually own the plant, the DNA for the plant. So they'll actually propagate the plants and they'll sell it to the farmers. The farmers will go plant it, and then they'll harvest the berries and sell it back. Except that the farmers are, small, fragmented, many of them. Berries actually grow around the world. So what you buy in Costco this week, and I don't know where it is this week, but let's assume it's from Florida. Well, 2 weeks from now, it's going to be from Mexico, and 3 weeks from then, it'll be from Peru, and then on to Brazil. So it's a follow-the-season model. So you think about the supply chain in a business like that, it's fragmented growers, it's all over the world, it's small companies, it's distributed, and you're tracking the sun or the season, trying to figure this out. And the name of the game is to get it to the table in 5 days, right? So it's a really, really complex ecosystem. And then on top of that, the thing about berries is a lot of labor in harvesting them. They have to be handpicked. And so if you're in Mexico and your day of ripening ends up being the day after World Cup, you've lost that harvest, period. Because no one's going to show up to work. And so in that industry, once you get the DNA of the berry right, your only way to scale and drive revenue and drive margins and become more successful is actually managing the operations. And so we're using data and artificial intelligence. We have cameras set up in these fields. The cameras actually machine learning and modeling with AI, the color, the size of the leaves, the size of the fruit, and actually predicting the day upon which it'll be the ripest to be picked. So then from there, you can actually start setting up the warehousing, the distribution, and basically run the business operations now in data tech and AI. And I just want to use that example. It's one of many that we work on, but such a great example that of something at least I had never imagined to be a technology business. Berries, my God. But actually, in the end, if they didn't have the data tech and AI powering it, they just fold over and flop. It's just that big. So it's a big driver, but it is a scary place to be, and there's a lot changing, and I'm sure you'll talk about that.
And the next time we all eat berries, we'll be thinking about the big supply chain and the predictive analytics behind it. Linda, you do a lot of work with return on investment for CIOs, and can you talk about how are you thinking about those models, and then also if you could cite some use cases for us to think about how digital transformation is coming forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if it'd be as complex as a berry supply chain management, but in a typical ROI model, when we think about and communicate with CIOs, CFOs, board, et cetera, we're really looking at 4 traditional pillars, and I'll talk a little bit about how today has really evolved it. You're looking at how is this investment in technology going to improve revenue? Revenue meaning better innovation, faster time to market, new product innovation, or just a little bit of differentiation that gives you a little more stickiness in the market and competitive position. So revenue. And then number 2, cost efficiencies. Are you able to scale? Was mentioned a few times, Sanjay. How can you scale out your investment? What is your ROI? What is the benefit? How sustainable and how durable is your cost efficiency? Third, operating efficiencies. Many of you have staff that are looking for better, more efficient ways to reduce the mundane, repetitive tasks. How can we improve the productivity of your staff across the organization and really federate it and scale that out? And then lastly, when you are building your organization and looking at strategic partnerships, what is the quantifiable value that this partner, this vendor that you're introducing to your ecosystem is going to add to your, and that's quantifiable. Do they have markets that you need access to? Do they have products you can co-innovate with? There are a lot of consideration. So revenue, cost, operating efficiency, strategic partnership are typically what we look at. And then added on top of it, with the advent of Gen AI, what we're finding in the marketplace, and no surprise to this audience, of course, is that the cost of iterating has really come down. And so being able to test out ideas and strategic partnerships has become a much easier business case to justify. So if you have a business case that didn't quite pencil out and it's been over 6 months, I highly recommend taking another look at it with the new technology costs. It's surprisingly amazing. And a great relatable use case on how Gen AI is being utilized today and how we're measuring value, not as complex as strawberries and berries. So Google partnered with Wendy's, where most of you are familiar with. This is a fast food franchise all over the country. And whether or not you're aware, but 75 to 80% of their volume is actually through their drive-through. And while it may not seem very complex, but the drive-through ordering system in Wendy's actually needs to be a human today, or yesterday, I guess, needs to be able to train and interpret over 1 billion combination of order possibilities. And so what we've done is we've leveraged our Gen AI tools and collaborated with Wendy's to take all of that possible menu combinations and integrate it into their POS system as well as their hardware system, so we can offload their staff to really focus on food delivery and exceptional service. So we're really excited to be able to take really small things like that, but behind the scenes, super complex, billion combinations, and free up staff to do more higher value activities.
It's a very interesting use case. And since you said Gen AI, Sanjay, I'm going to ask this. Gartner has placed Gen AI at the peak of inflated expectations. So we want to hear whether it is hype or where do you see it going?
Well, I would start by saying that it's a tale of two cities.
I would say that, and I agree with everything you said, Linda. I think the opportunities are tremendous. We're both in the enviable position of doing a lot of generative AI work, but also in a really awful position of making pretty much every mistake in the book. On the positive side, on the tale of two cities, I tell you that in some cases, it is absolutely changing the game. I'll give you a couple of good examples. I just had dinner with a colleague of mine, actually in the insurance industry, and among other things, what they do is they have this telemedicine video service. So if you've ever used it, instead of going into a doctor's office, you can log on to the portal, get a video conversation, and then be able to sort of describe your symptoms and so forth. And because they run this at scale, they actually have the data. So he was sharing with me that actually, on the average, a doctor in that system, in their corporation, spends 8 minutes with the average patient in working with his or her symptoms and so forth, which, by the way, 4 minutes is actually a conversation, advice, questions, symptoms, those sorts of things with the patient, and actually all of 4 minutes on the back end, pharmacy order, insurance notes, and then the doctor's notes themselves. And I'd met him, at the time I met him, this was only live for 3 weeks. They actually, because it's already in video, they put a generative AI on the back end of it, and essentially the generative AI would listen and actually fill out these 3 forms. And so they've gone from 4 + 4 = 8 to 6 minutes with the patient, 2 minutes, still reviewing what the generative AI put in, but actually just reviewing, not writing it in. And it sounds really amazing from a patient perspective because you've got 50% more time with the doctor you would see. But think about the physician that has gone through years and years of education to get to the point where they're spending 50% of the time on admin tasks and be able to cut it down by 50%. He's saying that this is completely changing the employee motivation there. And so that's a great example. We have so many other examples. I do some work in the advertising industry with one of the largest, one of the top 3 advertising firms. They're taking every asset, every print ad, every voice ad, every film ad, every video ad across all the languages, across all the countries, and they're using generative AI to actually label it And instead of just saying, a set of 6 executives sitting around a circular table having a conversation, it's down to blue jacket, gray shirt, Asian male. And so there are 180 labels instead of one label per video, millions of these assets. Fast forward to now, they're going to come in and do a new ad for your company, and they're able to sort of go in and say, this is the kind of thing I want to design. It'll search through all of that, come back and say, this was successful in Latin America, this didn't work in Brazil, here's the mood, here's the temperament, here's the composition. Completely changing the game in an industry that I would have never thought. Creative advertising is all about creativity, and I'm in front of my eyes, I see that shifting. All of that said, I think there's a second, and there's a flip side on generative AI, and I think it truly is a tale of two cities. I think the 3 biggest issues I find most of my peers struggling with, number 1 is finding the right use cases that drive economic returns. And I'm going to underline economic returns. There are a ton of use cases, try, experiment, look good, feel good, train people, get it right, awesome cases. But I'm talking about return on investment and picking the right use case that can actually deliver ROI by integrating it into existing processes and orchestrating change is actually very, very, very hard to do. And I think a lot of money is actually slated to be wasted in that. Now, the things will come out of it, people learn, et cetera, but you're not going to get ROI. Issue number 1. The second thing is the technology choices that are on the table, and we've got friends around the table that have great solutions, by the way. But the technology choices and the guardrails that need to be set are not that easy to put together. I know I have colleagues, and we are doing it all of 6 different ways. We're doing industrialized ChatGPT. We're doing a software embedded AI, waiting for AI to be embedded in a software that we already use, and then kind of getting advantage of that. We're actually doing prompt tuning. We're doing prompt tuning with retrieval augmented generation, which actually kind of cuts down the hallucination significantly. We're doing customizing a publicly available LLM, and then we're going off and actually building from scratch an LLM. And all of them have different pros and cons, and thinking through those choices and coming up with the right technology stack is not a simple decision. And then you can complicate that with the guardrails, because you've got to think about security, you've got to think about data, you've got to think about IP. If you go and ask a bunch of questions off of a publicly available LLM, you might inadvertently train that LLM with the knowledge that you have, such that the next person that comes in gets the benefits. So you have to think through all of these issues. And then, of course, the third one, which is the hardest problem to solve, is talent, because you have to think about it from 2 perspectives. 1, how do you bring the rest of your company along so they can take advantage of all of these AI tools you're going to put in their hands and get it embraced and adopted in a way that is meaningful for them and successful for the company. And then 2, just even for your own IT organizations, Laurent was right on the ball when he was saying, we've got to get our organizations to operate differently, to think differently, to show up at work with a very different mindset. And getting them to embrace, adopt, and be able to drive change and ask the questions that weren't asked and answer those questions is a big thing. And so talent always gets missed in this play, but is actually one of the largest drivers of success. And so I just want to kind of share with you some of the lessons we're learning as we're going through it, but there's a lot going on in this space.
So right use cases, governance, and then talent. And Laurent, you started off saying CIO's job, a role is changing because you want all this to be successful. What would you add to that as you're thinking about integrating these new technologies in your ecosystem?
Yeah, it's all about scale, right?
Yeah.
And so it's, we had a hackathon, 4 months ago, and we had, I think, 12 teams, and 8 of them wanted to use ChatGPT or Llama or other things, and it was very easy, actually. It was shockingly easy for these teams in 24 to 36 hours to come up with some very cool prototypes that they could, illustrate enough value, at least in the hypothesis, that people got very excited. And we were like, wow, this is great, and it's nice to know also that we have talent that can do this, right, in such a quick cycle. But then the difficulty came in. How do you take those prototypes and start building a roadmap to a product? And then from a product, it's one thing you have this sort of, and it's not just Gen AI, right? It's the broader portfolio. We call it applied AI now, where we're, it's natural language processing, it's machine learning, it's deep learning. There's elements of data science and data visualization. There's experience design. It starts getting bigger and bigger. And then, of course, if you can't bring, so you have to take it from a prototype. You got to actually build the prototype as an MVP. Then you have to build a product. And now that product has to be threaded, right, in its own complexity into your upstream and downstream workflow systems so that you have an impact, whether it's in the physician-patient visit or any other setting. And what you suddenly discover, among other things, is that many of the processes that you had to manage that prior to, I guess, it's funny, I talk about our historical processes, the ones we did 6 months ago, right? The ones we thought 6 months ago were good enough, we're discovering are not good enough, right? And so that's putting enormous pressure for us to completely rethink the way we go from idea to prototype to MVP to product to integrated solution that's vetted for risk tolerance into a production process that's threaded into an ecosystem of upstream and downstream sort of legacy applications, right? So that's one big thing. And you have no scale if you can't manage all that, right? And so suddenly, you take a step back and you're like, all right, well, it's not just about hiring some really cool PhDs in natural language processing or LLM or whatever it may be, but it's really about rethinking completely your life cycle of innovation from ideation all the way through to fully integrated production. What's exciting, though, is that it's putting pressure on all of us to upgrade, right, completely our capabilities. And some of these concepts of agile and things of that sort, because we've all known it's almost boring to talk about it. But the fact is most of us have not implemented them quite to the standards, or at least to the spirit, right, of these things. And now we have no choice but to do it, right? And so I'm a bit of an optimist, I guess, and I really believe in the potential. I think this is real. This is not crypto. This is not that kind of blockchain or things of that sort. I mean, not that those things are bad in themselves, but they're more intellectually interesting than they are really scaled solutions, at least for healthcare. And this is very real, and the impact is staggering. I mean, Sanjay, the example you gave about the productivity for a physician to interact with their patient versus doing administrative work is super real. And we're seeing a ton of those examples in healthcare, and the ROI is there, right? And it's interesting. Our first reaction was to say, oh, well, we're going to cut cost, right? I mean, we did GitHub Copilot, right? And I've got a few hundred developers in my organization. And we're like, oh, well, this is great. We're going to cut 40% of them, right? and then we took a step back. I was like, well, wait a minute. What we really should be thinking about is how do we take 40% of that capacity now that's been freed up and redeploy it to solve bigger problems? And one of the bigger problems we're attacking now is, so we serve about 3.5 million people in the 4 states in the Pacific Northwest. And I think we all know that early health is good, right? The earlier you identify your risks and the more you take care of them, especially before you get admitted to the hospital, the better your odds to having a good life, right? I mean, getting admitted into a hospital is a bad thing, right? So you should at all costs avoid that. And the problem is that if you look at all of our clinical staff, case managers, care managers, et cetera, we only have capacity to care for 4% of our 3.5 million people, and they're the most severely ill, right? And so if you could open the aperture, right, and start serving 10%, 20%, 30% of your population, now you're catching people before they're severely ill, before their chronic disease has become irreversible, and you're catching the people who are at risk of inevitably landing in that category if you don't do anything or you don't educate them, but you can really help them out, right? And start bending the odds, bending the probabilities that they're good. And so the impact is extraordinary, right? And so that's what we're trying to figure out now is how do you redeploy capacity? Once you have the teams, once you have the behavior, how do you redeploy that capacity to solve problems that we all know, but none of us have time to deal with? And I think every industry probably has them.
So real as long as we can scale it is what I'm hearing.
Scale is critical.
Scale is the key.
Scale is critical.
Right. And Linda, let me add one more thing here on the conditions of success, which is around ethics and trust. I had a chance to meet Barack Obama a few years ago at a leadership conference, and we asked him, like, what's the biggest challenge with AI? And he's like, deepfake, because obviously he was, there's so much concern about whether you trust it. How do you see that?
Yeah, it's a really big topic, and we're hearing from Laurent. Yeah, thank you. It's a big topic, and we're hearing from Laurent how easy it is to start using tools in the marketplace like ChatGPT to start ideating. And so one of the top use case that we're hearing and asked for by enterprises is how do we create safe playgrounds like ChatGPT? Can you hear me? Is this better? Thank you. So we're hearing and getting asked a lot by companies, can we provide a ChatGPT-like playground for their developers, but safe enough for them to use proprietary data to put in and very confidently know it's not going to train the base model to better your competition. And so I'm very excited to say that this is an area that Google GCP is very focused on. So from a trust perspective and an integrity perspective, our enterprise solution is focused on your data is your data. It will never be used to train the foundation models you're using. That's number one. Number two, we provide transparency around how the model works, what are the training data that is utilized, and all our data outputs, generative outputs, are grounded, and so you get to see the sources. So it's not a mysterious hallucination. And we know in the industry and the news articles of late, folks have gotten in trouble in not being able to trace back into it. If some of you have been to our Next 23 a couple of weeks ago, Google has launched a watermark, digital watermark for Gen AI so that we can help differentiate and isolate what are human IP and what are machine IP to try to start provide more tracing and transparency. And lastly, we're really focused on developing and refining our techniques, making sure the data that we're using to train these models have mitigated biases, are comprehensive, and that our output also have mitigated biases, and we continue to evolve on those areas. But it's a very good concern, and we're very much aware and open to continue to collaborate with the community to evolve this area.
Thank you. And Sabra, I will ask you from your lens, opportunities versus risk of generative AI or AI in general.
Yeah, I was really appreciative of the question that you asked, Linda, because we've been thinking deeply about this in government. A lot of the use cases and the examples that have been explained across the table are things we're thinking about too in terms of efficiency, putting staff to potentially higher value work while AI does stuff in the background, making sure that people are trained for that higher value work. And we take quite seriously our role in serving the public and the fact that that has to involve a great deal of trust with our community, a great deal of transparency with our community, and a great deal of equity. And all of those things are front of mind for the city of Bellevue as we start advancing our own AI initiatives in government of how do we bring the community with us and how do we continue to drive the high levels of trust that we've had. So some of the work that you talked about at Google helps us think about how to get there. And we are slow walking ways of creating those efficiencies within government ourselves, as well as working with our partners on, our existing technology partners on being really transparent about where those AIs already exist in their products. Great conversation about AI, though.
It's a lot of trust and transparency. Laurent and Sabra, we have several startups here, and in general, I want to ask you about how do you cultivate a culture of innovation? How can startups engage with both of your organizations?
I'll just keep going. Yeah, it's a great question. So we think about innovation as not just something that happens in IT in the city of Bellevue. It's actually one of our core values, which is something that drew me to the city when I came to work for the city about 8.5 years ago. And we think innovation happens across all of our lines of business. So I love that IT can be an enabler for that in the government and can also maybe help departments and our internal customers and community imagine the art of the possible. So when it's working really well, sometimes our internal customers bring us things they want to do that we help them do. And sometimes we bring them things that they may want to think about in terms of innovation. And I like that we don't have a separate innovation arm because it really is embedded in all of our lines of business. And I think that's really important to the partnership that we have with our internal customers. As far as startups getting involved, I would give a couple words of advice. One of those is be prepared for the long haul relationship. And what I mean by that, government budgets are usually done 2 years ahead of time. That is not something that we can always turn on a dime. So when you are investing and partnering with government, you are investing in a long-term relationship. Also, we can get a lot of interesting work done with pilots. So sometimes an approach for government is to partner with us and start small with the assumption that as it starts working better and better, then we can grow those services and grow that partnership over time. And that's been a way we've been really effective at partnering with startups to date. I also think there is a lot more we could be doing with startups, especially in the Northwest. So I welcome questions about that and conversations when we have time after this. Public-private partnerships are a huge driver for us.
And Sabre, I'll just remind everybody that we'll have a Q&A session and then breakout outsides for those that want to meet any four of them. And Laurent.
Yeah, I'll just add that I think of innovation maybe in a sort of imagine a 2x2, the overused management consulting 2x2, right? So I think on the horizontal axis, actually I don't have this chart, but I'm planning on making it, where you have sustainable innovation and disruptive innovation, right? And then on the vertical axis, imagine, inside out innovation and outside in innovation. I mean, we all operate in tremendously complex ecosystems. I think the city of Bellevue is without a doubt one of them. Healthcare is an extraordinarily complex series of partnerships, both transactional and strategic between, hospitals and doctors and pharmacy companies and so on. And so I think our organization internally, with all the partnerships and the themes that I touched on, is very good at sustainable innovation, right? We're good at developing sort of improved, faster, better quality, better services, et cetera, internally. And we look to startups for disruptive innovation. We look, so I mentioned earlier, part of Cambia is an early stage venture capital arm. We tend to be from seed to Series C funded. We tend to get out after Series C. And it's all about using these investment arms, which is not just the one we own, but also a series of other investment companies, where we seek to incubate or we seek to identify startups, right, that have ideas that would be hard to develop and succeed with inside the company because of our own internal culture and values and so on. So that there's a very clear space for startups there. And also on the sustainable side. But the problem with sustainable innovation is you have to do all the things I mentioned before, right? You have to start integrating with existing platforms, existing standards, existing ecosystems. And so I think it's very hard for a startup, right, to be successful in that game because, the lead time, the risk, there's just a lot of constraints. And so the disruptive side through third-party venture capital is kind of a nice play to do it. And then there's the inside out, outside in, right? So there's all the innovation that we are trying to do for our business model and our products and services. But I think in these complex ecosystems, there's tremendous opportunities in what sort of we're referring to as outside in. So the ecosystem, right? We have all this friction that I alluded to a few minutes ago. And if you can help us reduce that friction by looking at ways, not so much necessarily about how we operate or how we provide products or deliver services, but how we interact, right, with the broader ecosystem in our communities, there's tremendous opportunities for innovation there. I think it's, we're certainly seeing it in the both the venture and the private equity capital, but there's an enormous opportunity. I was listening to a JP Morgan, actually one of your colleagues, was talking about the fact that we could get 1 to 1.5% GDP, right? Purely accretive and additive to the existing U.S. GDP through AI. That's pretty staggering when you start translating what that means right, in an ecosystem of startups and new companies and innovation. So very exciting times, better than any time, I think.
A lot of opportunity for folks here to engage. Sanjay, let me turn to you in terms of where are you seeing the investments, whether it's startups or within the enterprise, and any advice you might have for viability of startups?
Look, there's a lot of bias in my answer. So just as a perspective, I work in the venture capital industry, do
Do a lot of due diligence work, but only related to data, tech, and AI. So I'm very narrow. I'm probably going to miss the mark. By the way, I didn't know about the Startup 425. I also mentored a couple of incubators, one in Tel Aviv, which is the Intel Ignite one here at University of Washington, which is CDL. For any of you that are interested, that's actually, both of them are just top-notch incubating organizations. In terms of your second question about, where do you have, what's the advice? Look, I think the number one challenge I see for entrepreneurs is what I call the perfect landing, wrong airport problem. And by that I mean that, these people I work with are just so brilliant, way smarter than me. They will end up building anything they put their minds to. It's just period. The challenge is it the right thing? Can it be adopted and integrated appropriately? Is it the right time in the market? Is it the right access? And by that, I think the whole procurement cycle in large company, I think is a big challenge in itself. But beyond that, how do you integrate it in a channel and make it as a part of something else? These are super tough problems to solve, and my one advice to CEOs and entrepreneurs would be, obviously you're focused very much on building the right product, and therefore, in my parlance, getting, your landing is going to be perfect. But please spend just as much time thinking about, is it the right airport that you're landing at? And by that, broadly thinking about how does it get integrated? What's the value chain? How does it get adopted, and how do you deliver economic output? So many things in the industry that are just fantastic to look at, but they don't deliver economic output. And I think in the macro economy that we're headed into, notwithstanding, I think the AI, kind of the positive effect, I think there's a lot of dampeners out there that we'll be seeing come through in the next few years. And I think in that macroeconomic environment, it's going to be really critical to get that piece right. So that would be my advice.
Love it. Perfect. It's all about the landing. All right. Linda, anything you would like to add?
If I might touch upon this with consideration first, and then where investments are going. Consideration, the panel here has mentioned if a startup could survive and develop a business that's resilient meaning financially resilient, technology resilient. In the work I do, I've seen in the last 2 years with economic uncertainty, capital providers, whether it's VCs or PE, has shortened the cash flow positive runway where you need to start generating net income from 2 to 3 years to down to 6 months. And so we're working with a lot of startups that's talking about how do I pivot and what are my assets that I can quickly generate revenue and short my costs. So resiliency. And then very importantly, which has also been mentioned here, is how do you then create an infrastructure and a culture to then quickly also innovate while it's very challenging to create a resilient base, but then also nimble enough to capture those opportunities. So on the investment side, we're very proud to say that 70% of AI startups and unicorns do work with Google Cloud. And we have programs where you can Google Cloud program for startup, and we provide $200,000 for qualified startups that will go towards Google service offerings, access to experts that will help you accelerate and evaluate your business model, as well as access to training and support. For AI startups, it's $350,000 that will go towards your expert access, Google services, and then training and support offerings. So we're very excited to be able to partner with the ecosystem and take advantage of all the innovation.
That's exciting opportunity over here. We do have time for Q&A. We're going to open it out for anybody that has a question for the panel, about 10 minutes for Q&A. So let me invite anyone that wants to ask a question. Right. Yes.
Sabrav, thank you for the tip around for a startup to wait for the 2-year cycle. We just closed one of the largest counties in Virginia State after 2 years of piloting, but it actually worked. My next stop is my hometown, which is here in Bellevue, to do the same thing. But my question was for a couple of your panelists. I think we've all been in the triangle of people, process, and technology. And of course, my question is around people. In the age of AI, we talk about upskilling and reskilling. And then we talk about the usual things around ROI and a sense of urgency. So I would like to hear from the panelists how you are thinking about sort of creating a compelling ROI for investing in your own people while you're also investing in technology and processes.
Laurent, you want to start us off?
Sure, it's a great question. We spent a lot of time talking about that, and I think the ROI is actually pretty straightforward, right? Because it goes straight to your purpose as a company and ultimately your employer value proposition, right? And for an organization like ours, and I think it's going to be true for any company, I mean, we're not all Google, right? So it's hard to attract based on strict brand, right? So for companies like ours that are perhaps evolving at a lower level, we have to come up with an employer value proposition that demonstrates that we are committed to investing in our people and not only enabling them and equipping them to be successful in their role while they're employees of Cambia, but even more importantly, giving them the confidence or the assurance that when they leave Cambia and they look for another job outside, they will be more competitive, right? They will be better skilled, whether not only in the context of healthcare domain, but in technology and skills and tools and processes, right, and culture. So it's very interesting, actually, as we talk about, I mean, we're in the middle of our budgeting and planning for 24. AI is a big line item. Actually, there's no precedent to it. I mean, we have some sustainment, so we're talking about probably multiplying pretty significantly. The one topic that's never discussed or never challenged is investing in employees, because we believe that our best employees will leave us if they don't think that we get it, right? And so maybe I'm lucky to work for a company like that, but we believe in investing in our people, and we will not sustain our performance, not to mention improve it, if we don't. So it's the good news that it's not a difficult ROI.
I can give you a perspective. We're 110,000 employees, so we actually are really thinking about this hard. I'll give you two quick takeaways. I think you think about the short term, you think about the medium term, you think about the long term. Actually, Laurent has nicely addressed the middle term, so I'm not going to go into that. I'll give you a quick example in the short term. This is a dear colleague in the consumer goods industry, the top 3 consumer goods company in the world, Fortune 50 actually. Annual kickoff, CEO, 50 presidents and heads of different businesses meet in Singapore, 3-day event. You guys have all done this in your various corporations. And it's a time to get together, plan the next year, enjoy and celebrate the success and really get it right. And the CEO, the CEO really closely, and we put together a session in the afternoon one of the days to just get people engaged in generative AI. And so we broke the group into 10 groups of 5 or 6 each, put one person that could manage all this stuff, and then gave them access to Midjourney and to GPT-4 or an Azure extension. Basically said, each of you put together a business plan for a new product that you're going to come up with, and then pitch to each other, and then whoever wins it gets a prize, right? And these are executives that have been around the position for a long time, super competitive environment, right? So they're really giving it a lot. A lot of great things came out of it. Amazing ideas. People get involved, hands-on. This company's kind of completely turned the corner. By the way, separate takeaway, every one of us should do one of that with our boards or our leadership teams and so forth. Here's the rub in the story. So, all this rah-rah, backslapping, people getting really excited, want to introduce this. You look around the room and you say, who are the people in the room that don't wear the company badge? And it turned out there were 10 people, one in each team. So those people over there, they're prompt engineers. You know what prompt engineering means? They're saying, hey, wait a minute, Sabra, that's a good question you asked. Can I rephrase it this way? Or, you turn around to Linda and say, I know you're asking this, but did you mean to ask that, right? They did not have one employee in the company that could have done that, and we had to bring 10 people from the outside. And it just kind of points to these short-term gaps corporations have, and that really gets in the way of adopting and bringing new tech in. On the long term, I just say one thing. aptitude over skills. I think I got hired for my skills, right? Most of us hire today for skills. What's the degree, what's the experience, what have you done, what things have you implemented, what technologies do you know? All of that needs to go out of the window. I think the long-term strategy for recruiting, for talent management has to be hire for attitude. You need curiosity, you need humility, you need people that ask questions and are comfortable at asking questions. You need people that will learn, unlearn, and relearn. It's a very different approach to life than getting focused on skills. So that would be the one thing I'd leave you with, which is start thinking about attitude and not about skills as you think about your long-term talent strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can build.
Thank you. Well, very insightful conversation. But as a CEO and an entrepreneur, I have a question. I started in healthcare about 9 years ago. What I realized in my experience is like on the idea, on the vision, on the product, I get to spend only 30% of my time, right? Like what is the time and the focus, right? Like with the innovation happening in the AI, right? Like how do you do the time management and decision making when you have to take care of the financial side, the legal side, the regulation, right? Like it's a highly regulated industry. So how do you think about that, right? Like as we are getting into the new era?
It's a really hard question. I've never been good at managing time. It's a really hard question. And, all the risks that have led to all those regulations, of which I'm sure some of them perhaps are not as valuable, are all exacerbated, right, by not just the technology, but the speed at which people are moving. So I think the challenges you're highlighting are more difficult than ever, right? I think for healthcare innovators, and it sounds like you have scars to prove it, it's not only landing in the airplane at the right airport perfectly, but it's choosing the right airplane, right? And being with the right partner, right? And I think that, and I hate to admit it, but I think at times I was the wrong partner for startups because I didn't have quite the same speed or the same equal stakes. And sometimes I've been the best partner where I sort of fought to the death, right, to help decisions to happen faster and to eliminate some of that. I think you have to choose very carefully. It's some of the dark side of what they say about doctors sometimes, right? They say, if you want to be a famous, successful doctor, you have to choose your patients carefully, right? Please don't quote me on that one. But I think as a startup, you have to choose not just your customers, but your development partners very carefully, because if there's an industry in which you could waste years, right, with the right idea, the right talent, the right people, the right funding, the right everything, and still fail. It's healthcare, right? And so I don't have an easy answer, but you need great partners, right, who are there backing you up all the way.
It's a very good point, but when you think about entrepreneurs and startups, right, like when I see my colleagues in different companies, they're spending time raising money.
Yeah.
Most of the time, right, doing these pitches and stuff like that. I don't know, how is it helpful when you should be focused on the product market fit, the vision, the delivery, because that takes away that time, because raising money, right, like due diligence and like, everybody, it's a full-time job, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I don't have a magical answer for that one. I will say that our corporate venture capital arm, right, company called Echo Health Ventures, has a very significant staff, and what we believe, right now, of course, I'm unbiased because it's our team. What we believe is that they're staffed with a very significant number of insiders, right, who help the companies we choose to invest in to do a lot of that, right, and to manage a lot of that legwork that takes innovators, entrepreneurs away from, building out their products and iterating and making them successful. It's not perfect, though.
Can help us understand the process. What is your evaluation process?
Yeah.
What is your criteria? What is the timeline?
Yep.
It feels like it's very subjective.
So this could be a good breakout session if you like. And So, in order to make time for the breakout, let me ask one final takeaway for the audience from each of you. First of all, I want to thank you for making the time today to be here. And starting with Linda, one final takeaway on digital transformation or something you're excited about.
I am super excited about this. I didn't always work in Google, and for those of you, I imagine most have encountered this. Have you ever wanted to just Google data in a system in your company or online? You're at a portal, I wish I could just Google. So we launched Enterprise Search, which is Google's search logic and natural language, and it's embedded Gen AI. So companies now can very quickly deploy on your own data Enterprise Search, so you could actually just Google your own data, which I'm super excited for, and I'm excited to hear all the great feedback in the marketplace.
Thank you. Sanjay?
I can't add anything to that. I think maybe one thing I'd leave you with, maybe it goes to the entrepreneurs in you, it would go for the large corporate executives in you. Anytime we approach something, there's a set of things we have to solve for. And my one advice to you is solve the hardest problem on the plate first. I've made this mistake many times. You try and get the bases covered, and you make progress, you think it's going to be iterative, then you're going to get there, and then you come across the really hard problem that you knew was always there, but you held off, and then you have to kind of start anew. And so that's one thing I tell you, which is, look at everything you're going to do in the next 2 years, break it down all the different pieces that need to come together for that thing to be successful, and pick the thing that's going to be the hardest and solve for it first.
Thank you. Sabra?
I'm with Lorenz on being an incredible optimist about this moment in time in technology. The energy around everything that we're doing with AI feels to me like the internet in the Bay Area in 1994. For those of you who happen to be in the Bay Area in 1994 through maybe 8. So I think it's a tremendous time to be doing what we're doing. And I would encourage the entrepreneurs and the startups in the room, for those of you who do want to work with government or public sector in general, get to know our strategic goals, get to know our strat plans before you pitch us, so that you're not coming in and saying, I could do anything you want. Instead, you have some idea of what we're looking for. And thank you very much. This has been a great panel, and I really appreciate being with all of you tonight.
And Laurent?
Hard to keep up with this group. What can I say? No, maybe I'll speak of community, right? Which is what brings us all together here. There's a lot of people who are facing really complex problems, not just in healthcare, I think in every industry. And we live with them, we're in the same communities, whether it's city infrastructure, city services, whether it's technology, whatever it may be. And there's a lot of people whose heads are spinning, right? I mean, this room is an incredibly talented room of exceptionally bright people with great ideas and great energy. And to Sanjay's point, a great ability an aptitude, right, to learn and kind of grab the bull by the horns. But there's a lot of people who are not, and it doesn't make them any less exciting to work with. It's just that, we need to slow down, identify them, and commit to them. And I worked for GE for a long time, and I was a big global guy who traveled all over the planet. And the local dimension of my role, we used to like to say, hey, we're global and we're local, but we were not local at all. And I chose this new chapter in my career to be local. And I've gotten extraordinary joy, right, by trying to find a way to have an impact with the people we're around. And so when we talk about Gen AI, and I don't know exactly how to do this, but we can all do this together, which I think is the point. But we have an amazing opportunity to take all this excitement, all this optimism, all this momentum, all these resources and this talent, and have an impact right here, right here in this community across whatever areas that you're interested in or personally passionate about. And so maybe that's all I can add is let's give back, right? And let's share the talent, let's share the ideas. It's not just always about money, right?
All right. Sounds like we have the right ecosystem and community here to land the plane at the right airport. That's how I'll summarize. Kishore, I'm going to invite you to close this out with your takeaways and a few announcements you want to make.
I'm just going to do it from here since there's a comfortable mic here. So what an amazing panel. Thank you. I just want to say over the last several days, I being the president of TiE, I get emails, I get to see everything, and a lot of people said, Kishore, you have assembled a great panel, and I want to say, they were damn right.
Can we give them an applause?
And by the way, I don't get to take the credit here. It's Monica, Malay, and Minnie, and of course, all of you who kind of organized this. So thank you, guys. Thank you, all the panelists, for taking the time on a Tuesday. I know how tough your schedule is, being an executive, so appreciate your support of TiE. I'll take a couple more minutes. I definitely want to thank Vamshi and the Quadrant Resources for supporting TiE. We are a nonprofit org, and we are doing all this programming with your support, because of your support. So definitely thank you. Thank you to the city of Bellevue as well for this beautiful facility. And we continue to do these events. I see several new faces. So TiE is growing, and we are very particular about the folks that join TiE. But I welcome you all to connect with us. I want to say a couple things about TiE. Malay already alluded to that. Our mission is very clear and is very pure. We want to inspire entrepreneurship, and we want to equip entrepreneurs. Those are the two things we want to do. And how do we do that? By doing following four things. Networking, you saw it today. Education, again, part of it is panel discussions. Funding, we have TiE Seattle Angels. Shirish leads that. So we do fund startups. And mentoring. So a lot of folks here have been there and done it. So I know entrepreneurship is a lone journey. So don't feel alone. Jump into a TiE bandwagon, and we'll help you out. So again, if you have expertise in a particular area, you want to give back to the community, talk to us. And we would love for you to join TiE. Couple of announcements, and then we will go to the breakout session. So I have the audience, I got to do this. We are very excited talking about inspiring entrepreneurship. We are revamping our TiE program, which is TiE Young Entrepreneurs. It's for high school students, 9th through 12th grade. And this year, the cohort starts in October. If you have a high school student, or if you know of one that would be interested, then join us on September 14th for a virtual session, or September 28th for an open house. We do all the education in Microsoft campus. The most exciting part this year is that Arvind Bala, if Arvind is here, raise your hand. There you go. He is co-founder and CTO of a Seattle area unicorn, Seek Out, $1 billion plus valuation, and he is going to be the instructor. And he is already weaving in generative AI into the curriculum. So again, fantastic opportunity for high school students. Second one is, again, if you like this event, the next one is October 19th, and we're going to be talking about product leadership. And for those of you running a product startup or even product management in a large organization, if you want to step up your game, you can get insights from some leaders who have been there and done it. So it's in GIX, another beautiful facility in Bellevue. So October 19th. Next one. We're also excited that this year we started a podcast, From Startup to Exit, and Shirish and Gauri, our TiE board members, are the co-host. So check out those series. You can get it on our website. It's also available on Apple and Google Podcast service. The first one is already out. It's a beautiful conversation with Nick, who's the founder of OfferUp. So very excited about this series. And if any of you want to contribute, feel free to get in touch with us. And finally, one last announcement for charter members and those who want to become charter members and even associate members. The biggest, I would say, largest entrepreneurship forum in the world is happening, and it's being organized by TiE Global in Singapore. And that's November 15th through 17th. I'm going there. A contingent from TiE will be going there. So definitely fantastic opportunity to connect with your peers worldwide. So again, that's in Singapore. So thank you again, everyone. I appreciate all of you joining again on a Tuesday and supporting TiE. Thanks very much.